I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is my career. I'm going to go do it to the best of my ability, and this is going to happen. There was no like, if this doesn't work, I guess I'll do this. If this doesn't work, I guess I'll do that. Like, it was like, this is what we're doing.
I'm Tom Ward, and over the last couple years, I've had the chance to sit down with some of the biggest celebrities and influencers in the world. What I've always found most fascinating is the stories of the businesses that they've built behind the scenes. On this show, you'll get an inside look of what it takes to build a successful business from some of the biggest celebrities, business people, and up-and-coming entrepreneurs in the world. This is The Tom Ward Show.
Guys, welcome to the Tom Ward Show, where we talk to the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. And today we have Michael and Lauryn Bosstick, two of the most successful entrepreneurs maybe in the world, but definitely in the world of podcasting and content creation, I would say.
Thank you for having us. We've been looking forward to doing this.
And really, thank you for having me, because I came here to this incredible setup, which I was very impressed with. Well, Michael, insert B-roll here. This is where you're going to see the magic of video. We're going to see B-roll of the whole beautiful setup. But this is no joke.
Well, I started thinking about my commute here today, and it was just right, about 8 steps down the hall. So I figured this would be ideal commute for me. But no, I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier, and Lauryn, I want to start with you too, because you have a story similar to mine. I love the fact that you grinded it out. I'm talking 7 days a week blogging. Now, blogging's, I don't know, my opinion, it's kind of almost dead now because it's all video. But I come from a blogging background too. And you're grinding away, and you said you didn't make money for like 3 years. Is that correct?
I started blogging, I think, 13 years ago, and I was attending San Diego State University, and I was like, I'm going to start a blog, but I'm going to do it 100%. I'm going to do it every single day, and I'm going to do it while I'm bartending, and I'm not even going to think about money. And I think that's my advice with anyone who's starting out in any kind of content creation. It's a podcast, TikTok, Instagram. It's like, don't start out with the intention of making money, because the money will come if you keep doing it every single day. And I mean, there's a lot of things that you have to do, but just the consistency is really important. So yes, I started out with a blog, and it's turned into a podcast, a product line, a book.
Yeah,
Here we are.
Well, I think that the key there is that most people, they start thinking about a business idea and they think about only the money aspect, and they don't realize that building a business takes a really long time, or at least to build an impactful, successful business that's going to have staying power. And so if you're in it for just the money, you don't actually like doing it, when it gets tough, you're going to quit, right? And so the way we think about it is like, if you could find something that you love doing and you would do it for free, do that. And then if you can layer the business and you can build in some revenue marks and you can make some money doing it, even better. The worst case scenario is you end up doing something you love for free. Best case is you're doing that thing you love and getting paid for it.
A very successful business entrepreneur told Michael and I that you should run your business as if it were a multi-million-dollar company from the beginning. And I would say you should run your blog or your content as if it's a brand from the beginning. I think it's really important to always think of yourself as a brand from the beginning and really think about where you want to go and work backwards.
Yeah, and I read that you said the vision wasn't to have the successful blog. That was a byproduct of the main goal, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was building a brand. That's number one.
Number one.
100%.
But so you're bartending, you're in college. Who thinks like that? Who thinks about building a brand? And follow-up question, could you imagine the brand looking like this?
Yes.
Are you serious?
I've been asked that before, and the answer is yes. I could imagine the brand, because when you build something on your own and you build brand, the sky is the limit, right? You can do a book deal. You could do a TV show. You could do, there wasn't a podcast around, but a podcast. There's so many different facets that you can do. It's like an onion. So yes, I could imagine it looking like this. And I think where it came from is when I look back at my childhood, I realized the whole childhood I was branding in my own way. Everything.
What do you mean?
I like to scrapbook. That was my thing when I was little, which sounds looking back kind of dorky, but essentially I was making a blog on paper. Right? It wasn't around. I'm doing an online
Pinterest board.
And if you would have told me, oh, you could make money scrapbooking, I would have been all about it. But it's just about taking something that you really love and turning it into a brand and something you can monetize. And I always thought like that when I was little. And I mean, here we are now. I'm not surprised I love branding so much.
Well, and I think we've just always lived with the firm belief that if you create something that people care about, that resonates with them, that then the sky's the limit. You can do so many different things with that. And so probably did not envision sitting here. I mean, if you would have asked me if I would even be doing a podcast 7 years ago, I'd have looked at you funny, right? Let alone running a company like Dear Media. But because we had the vision to kind of build and create content that I think resonates with people, then you can start to say, oh, there's a lane in that commerce lane. There's something to do with media. There's something to do with, a book, or something to do with a show. And those lanes kind of present themselves as more and more people start to resonate with the stuff that you're creating, as long as it's authentic.
Now, you have so many creators now. Podcasts, primarily, that's your business.
Sure.
Do you have to preach that to them, that it's patience is the key and consistency? Because I had to look up her name again. Alex Earle is a perfect example. First of all, let's talk about Alex Earle. That girl is no joke. And I will say that again, no joke. Insane numbers. I haven't seen numbers since Emma Chamberlain like this, where not only blowing up and you go, if you're listening to this, you go, oh, okay, well, there's a girl with 2 million followers, just like every other pretty girl on TikTok. But the difference is the engagement.
Yeah.
500,000 likes, 800,000. And not only when I go into TikTok now do I see her, but I see more videos of people talking about her. And I guess my question to you is that what everybody wants and expects?
I think Alex Earle has done an incredible job of, she just posted her house, like what it looks like the day after New Year's, and she shows you the real behind the scenes. I think people are really craving that refreshingly real content. And I don't want to even say the word authentic. It's just like what it really is without the social media filter.
Without the curation.
Right. And I think she makes herself relatable to, for lack of a better word, to everyone. Like yesterday I was like, oh shit, I have broccolini by my bed right now. Like I can relate to that. Like you
she had a box of cheeses next to her bed. I saw that. I'm like, oh, I can relate.
It's relatable. And so I think she does a really good job of that, and she seems very down to earth. And then additionally, I think her ex-boyfriend, who's a baseball player, wouldn't post her on his Instagram. And I think every single girl can relate to having that one guy that wouldn't post them. No matter if you're poor, if you're rich, if you're whatever, if you're famous,
you're not
if you're
good enough to make his Instagram feed.
A lot of girls can relate to the fact that she didn't get to make his Instagram feed, and
messed up.
I looked on his comments the other day, and people are just like, "What? Not good enough for it to post Alex on your Instagram?"
God.
The women united around her, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. So, but that's the 1 in a billion,
right? Sure.
Right. The Emma Chamberlain, the Addison Wright. That doesn't happen to most people I sit down with. Most of the people I sit down with, whether they're creators or entrepreneurs, it's the same story. And there's a lot of pivots. I started out creating this kind of content, and then I switched. Or my startup was doing this. People hated it, but they liked this one little piece of it, and we decided to make more of those.
Sure.
And is that kind of what you found in your entrepreneurial life and your creator life?
I definitely saw that a lot of bloggers around me were posting things about themselves. And what color dress they were wearing or what color they dyed their hair. And I was like, okay, but how can I make this bigger than me? Because after a while, how many times can I share what color nail polish I was wearing? So I'm like, I'm going to go interview, and this is 13 years ago. So I'm like, I'm going to go interview other people. And
like who? Like what kind of people?
Supermodels, actresses, whoever I can do. And
authors,
what I would do is authors.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tweet. I remember doing this. I would tweet 100 people a day. Every single day. I would just DM them and say, hey, I have this blog. It's called the Skinny Confidential. Can I interview you about your beauty, your health, your wellness? And literally 2 people would respond. But then I would take the 2 people that I got. So I remember I got Stassi Schroeder before Vanderpump.
I'm a big fan.
Before Vanderpump.
Oh, how was she even somebody?
She was a
Back
model.
in the blogging days.
She was a model.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, I want to interview you. And then I found, I think, Kate Upton, not Kate Upton, Charlotte McKinney. She was another one who was a Victoria's Secret model. She said yes. So what I would do is I would then go, my next 100, I would say, well, look, Stassi came on the blog here. Charlotte came on the blog here. And then I would just keep piling and piling. And it was essentially compound interest.
Yeah, we did the same thing with the podcast, right? In the beginning, everyone's like, what the hell is a podcast? And then over time, the right person says yes, and that leads to a few more introductions. But to your point, I think our perspective has always been that we can't be the focal point of the business or the brand or whatever we're creating. It has to be about the consumer or the audience, right? And you have to be providing them outsized value for very little cost, right? So if the podcast is free, if you can get some value from there, that's not just about us, but about potentially entertaining them or enhancing their life or providing them some inspiration, that's a formula for success for anybody, right? And so we think about that with everything, even with Dear Media. It's like our podcast, our show started to gain enough notoriety for us where it was a successful venture on its own, but how do you bring others up then, right? So instead of calling it the Skinny Confidential Network or the Bosstick Network, it's Dear Media. It's more inviting for other creators to come in that we can help, give them a platform to help them grow, to help them do the same thing.
I think that's how you have longevity too. And, Oprah is
bringing other people up.
It's like, how long can someone hear you talk about yourself? It starts to get to a point where it's like, it's just too much. So I think bringing other people on, having different characters. I always say there's like supporting characters and introducing the characters in your life. I think that's important.
But you talk about these creators and, you see them, and I always think about it in terms of longevity, right? If you're building a brand, I need to work in running a company like Dear Media or investing in a company. I need to see the person that's going to be there for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I can't have the flash in the pan that's going to last a year and then fade out, right? And you see a lot of creators that do this. One day you're talking about them, the next day you're like, what the hell happened to them? Or they build a lot of attention, but they don't know then what to do with it. Right.
We've seen that a lot.
It's the same shtick, right? It's like,
and then you see the Bang energy drink deals or the money grabs. Like, I need money now. What do I do?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you didn't do that. So you took a different approach where and I was curious, how do you do this? Because as a creator myself, you go, okay, I need money yesterday. So give me the Bang energy drink deal. I don't care about the company. I don't drink it. I think it's garbage. Give me the $5,000 check. I'm down. But how do you say no to that while also saying, I want to have that, what is it? I'm a guy. What do I know? The freezing product that you have.
Ice roller.
The ice roller that's going to take 4 years to develop. How do you kind of balance both? Like, I need money now, but in 4 years, I want to kind of come up with this. Like, how do you manage that?
I am incredibly patient because I have such big goals and I know it's going to take me a long time to get to them. And I do not want to put my name on any product that is not 100%. And I mean from the unboxing to the postcard to the product to what the product does. I want you to get your hands on my product and I want you to be at happy hour with 10 of your friends being like, this is the ice roller. Like, and if it's not that, then I'd rather not put my name on it. And the same goes, I've turned down a lot of different, I've turned down a lot of money.
I'm sure.
I've turned down a lot of companies because it just wasn't the right fit. And I feel like you really in this game have to play the long game.
I don't think that's just for the creator space though. I think that's, for any entrepreneur or anybody that's, in any career path, right? If you take that short-term money that at the diminishment of your brand or your business or your personality, like it kills your longevity, it kills your credibility, it kills your reputation. And then once that happens, it all dries up. And so I think we've just always had the perspective where we've thought, okay, chasing short-term money is at the detriment of long-term success, right? And I think if you have that perspective, it makes it much easier to say yes and no to things.
And you've said it before, and it's a buzzword. It's kind of annoying to say, and I'm tired of hearing about it when I'm saying it anyway. Community building. You guys did a great job of this, and I never look at notes, but I have them for moments like this. Your site says the Skinny Confidential is all about having kale in one hand and champagne in another. And in that one sentence, I know exactly who you're talking about. I know that girl. I know what she looks like. I know where she shops. I know what kind of music she listens to. It's all summed up in that. And I've also read that both of you know your audience. I interviewed Bethany Frankel from Real Housewives, and she said the same thing. When she's having a book signing, she knows which people are her people, or that's not a great example. If she goes to a mall, she can pick them out of a crowd. How do you get that? I mean, how do you get that? Because in the beginning, you're just like, I just want downloads. I just want views. How do you go, these are the people who are my people?
This is a really good question. I actually wrote down the person's name who I'm talking to, what color nail polish she wears. And I did this like, I want to say 11 years ago. Like when I was starting out, I was like, who am I speaking to? Because if you're trying to speak to everyone, it's like an echo chamber. I was like, who are we talking to? And I actually could go to a mall and tell you who uses a Skinny Confidential ice roller. I can really see it from the energy, from the person. I know exactly like what they listen to, what TikToks they like. I could really break it down. And I think when you're starting out, it's like, who are you talking to? Are you talking to entrepreneurs? Are you talking, like Gary Vee to me talks to someone who is just getting their foot in the door and they're starting to get curious about entrepreneurship. He knows as the entrepreneur becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, that maybe they're not going to consume his content
They
all the time.
outgrow it almost.
And he knows
And he
that.
cheers for that.
And he cheers for that. And he encourages it. And so he knows he's talking to the 16 to 25-year-old who just wants to get their foot in the door, and he really makes content for that. So I think that's really smart and strategic, especially when you're building a brand. And Bethany is an incredible example of someone who's done a great job.
I think the other perspective also is that we're not arrogant enough to believe that everyone's going to love us. And I think a lot of people are, right? They think that, I'm going to put
Who
something
could
out.
not love me? I'm wonderful. That's what people think.
I go into it with the perspective of like, man, there's going to be a lot of people that really don't like me. But that's okay.
The truth.
That's the truth. But I think that's the truth for any online creator, especially maybe if you're somebody that's just like, if you were just tuning in for the first time and you hear either of us say something, wacky, and you're like, okay, like, I'm not looking for the person I'm going to capture right away. I'm looking for the people that are there and they're sticking around for a long time and I can continue to serve them, not just the passive viewer that's going to go viral on some video, right? And so I think that's how you build that relationship, and then you double down on it by making sure that you're in lockstep, constantly working on, serving them what they're asking for, right? And obviously it has to be stuff that you're passionate about, but not trying to say, okay, we've got, I'll just use a fishing, we got a fish on the line and now we're going to go look in the rest of the ocean. It's like, no, like continue to build this lane of business to the listener, especially like if you have a product brand, you can continue to build that consumer base. I see so many businesses, they get a really engaged consumer base and like, hey, we got them, let's go serve someone else. And they just completely abandon that, listener or consumer.
It's like,
or
you
viewer.
idiots, they're right there.
Yeah.
But you forget about them. You look over and you go, who else is out there?
It's a mistake. And I'm not the first entrepreneur to say this, but if you try speaking to everybody, you end up speaking to no one. It's true, right? Like you have to build that relationship. They have to, it is a relationship at the end of the day, right? Someone that's tuning into our show week after week, maybe even for the last 7 years, like that's a relationship. I may not talk to them every day and they may not speak back, but they're listening, right? And so, I'm much more interested in continuing to provide that person value who's then going to go and share that with other like-minded people as opposed to trying to capture somebody who may not be, for us.
I also am a huge fan of the pivot. And I think that this needs to be talked about more. When you're creating content, it's okay to pivot to what the audience wants. So you said you started as a blogger and then you realized, okay, I need to pivot to this because the audience wants more audio. Like Michael and I are constantly like looking for the pivot. So maybe we're doing too many interviews that are this way to the right and we need to go more to the left. Like we're constantly pivoting and evolving the content. I think where you get really stuck is when you get formulaic with it and you don't call yourself out and you don't take you think you're too big to take criticism. You have to constantly be listening to the feedback and tweak it and pivot it. I'm not saying change it into a way that makes sense for the audience. Like they need to like sort of be your guide.
Yeah, like if somebody says, I hate this guy and this girl's guts and they suck, like I maybe I'm not going to listen to that as much as someone saying, hey, like they've continued to do this same kind of content, it's redundant. Like I'm going to take that to heart and say, you know what, like maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe, these people are trying to give me some critical feedback and adjust from there, right? There's a distinction between people that are maybe trolling you on the internet and people that are really there for you that are maybe calling you out and saying like, hey, let me hold you to account a bit.
You had the best quote and it was something like, our show and our guests, it's kind of like a bag of Chex Mix. You may pull out a piece of Chex, but all of a sudden you get, hey, I got a f***ing pretzel, and it's like, I'm going to interview a Victoria's Secret model and all of a sudden we're talking to sex workers in Vegas, we're going to go total, you don't know what you're going to get. And I think that's good as the audience, as somebody who's listening, you go, I want to be surprised by the next guest. And the way I always look at guests too is I want it to be like a really cool dinner party. I don't want all 40-year-old white guys.
Yep.
I want a 19-year-old trans person. I want an old black guy. I want everybody represented, but the coolest of the cool in those different demos. And I think, I don't know, that's my feeling on how do you book guests. I mean, is that kind of...
Not to make a commentary on the greater scope of the political spectrum of the country, but I think this is why you get into these echo chambers where people just start to speak to only like-minded people. And,
so boring.
And yeah, what happens is then your opinion is formed solely on that base that you're speaking to, and you see that as the only truth that exists. And so for Lauryn and I, and I've been talking about being selfless here, but we're a little selfish in the sense that we want to have that same dinner party. We want to talk to different interesting
it's
people from all
fun.
spectrums. Yeah, exactly. And for us, there's no way you get to 500 something shows if it's the same thing over and over. We have to have that interesting mix. And I think, again, it holds us to account and makes us question ourselves, because we may have somebody that comes on that sees the world from this perspective, and then somebody comes on and sees it from a totally different perspective. And then we have to kind of sit there and be like, what made sense out of those two conversations, and form our own opinion. And hopefully the listeners do the same.
Yeah, and you just mentioned it too. So you've done, it was a crazy stat, I'm not going to remember the numbers, but you've done 2 shows a week, like 500, 600 episodes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, we'll talk about what we DM'd about in a little bit. This is almost, shockingly, almost kind of a side thing. Not a side thing, but in the grand scope of the empire you're running right now, this is a small part of it. What keeps driving you? You don't have to do 2 episodes a week forever. I know it's a grind. Oh man, we gotta book guests. We have to have meetings about this. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes of putting these things together. Why bother?
Yeah, we did 2 interviews this morning.
Did you really?
Yeah.
And today we're recording on New Year's Day Observe. No one's working. The freeways are empty, but you're here.
I'm obsessed with working when no one's working. And I'll tell you why. Just like to tangent this for a second. When no one is working is when I get my most deep work, because when everyone's working and it's like, Monday at 10 a.m. and there's no holiday, it's everyone else's to-do list. But today is a day where I have space to concentrate. Everyone's off. I love, 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 love the 2nd through the 10th of January, because everyone kind of has their foot off the gas. I can actually get deep work done and priorities that I've put off. I love the last 2 weeks of December. Everyone has their foot off the gas. I'm just obsessed with times. Even I'm the type of person, I hope my team isn't listening, that will send 600 emails on a Sunday because no one can send it back. I love times when people aren't working.
And not even just in
you.
business. We love November, December, when people check out for the holidays and stop going to the gym. That's when we hit it the hardest. And it just
oh, I love it.
I feel
December at the gym is the greatest ever.
It's the best.
January, the worst.
Yeah, because everybody's got the New Year's resolution,
But
right?
you know what? They're gone by March.
Yeah, that's
no,
true.
I mean, if you're listening, I hope you stick it out, and I hope you're there in December.
No, but I think that there's, a gem there in the sense that if you can kind of put in the hours and the time consistently when many are taking their foot off the gas, that compounds over time, not just in business, but in your personal life, fitness, health, anyway,
We are definitely, you said something, a lot of people think that the podcast is our main hustle. It's definitely something that we do. I don't want to say on the side, because we take it very, very, very seriously.
Sure.
It's a top priority totally. But we also do a lot of stuff that I think maybe isn't necessarily broadcasted online. I'm an investor. Michael's an investor. I'm an author. We're both entrepreneurial. Michael's a business owner. I own a product line. There's a lot of stuff that we do that maybe isn't so front facing. And, it's something that we also want to explore more on our podcast, which we haven't. So to be asked that question is cool.
Yeah, people ask us
Who
all
said
the
I was
time.
going to ask that question?
You did.
Oh,
You
did I?
did. You said you slid in his DMs.
I'm just messing
But
with
the
you.
people, they say, what's it like working together all the time? And I don't think people realize we actually... Yeah, it's a mess.
The worst.
But we actually don't work together all the time. The office we're sitting in here, Dear Media is a completely separate business from the Skinny Confidential, and she has a completely different team than the Dear Media team, right? And so my day-to-day is coming in here as CEO, her day-to-day is coming into her business as CEO, and we have completely separate teams, separate entities, separate payrolls, separate everything. The podcast is something that we get to come together on and do together, which I think is how we found joy in it, where it's that's the thing as a couple we can do for fun.
That's cool.
And so, and the reason we continue to do it, because yes, it is a grind and it's all that, but we really enjoy it. And I said that earlier, find something you actually, we would do the podcast for free, right? It's now become a greater business and it's spraying a few different things, but I would be sitting here talking to you on a mic for free every week if I could, if I had the time.
I'm with
right?
you.
And so
there's nothing, obviously hanging with my family if my wife's listening to this, right? But other than that, there's nothing I would rather do than sit down and talk with interesting people that I really have no business. I'm just like you listening. I'm a regular guy. It's like, I'm at Paris Hilton's house today. What's cooler than that?
Yeah, I think
pretty
because
cool.
we've been
It's pretty
doing
cool.
It's people I think because we've been doing it for a while, people don't realize I still sometimes have to pinch myself, how the hell am I sitting across from this person? Right?
Yeah.
You almost don't realize how you get in the room with some people, and I think it's because if you build something and you go to someone and say, hey, do you want to come on and talk about whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug on this platform. And then, it gets you access to have interesting conversations that you might not get otherwise.
Now let's talk. Let me count your money. Let's have some fun. Right? This is fun for me and you listening, right? Let's have some fun here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to ask what you make. We don't do that, right? But if you look at the big Dear Media, whatever you want to call it, pie.
Sure.
Now, how much of that, percentage-wise, does a podcast make versus everything else?
That's a Michael Bosstick question.
Is that a Michael Bosstick question?
Well,
Show me a pink graph.
Show me a graph.
At this point, Dear Media.
Ballpark. I'm curious.
Sure. I mean, Dear Media is a multiple, 8-figure year business. It's private equity backed. It's got close to 100 shows under the umbrella. So it's become larger than Lauryn and I's, right?
Wow.
And, obviously I have partners in that business. I bootstrapped the business to Series A and then went and raised the Series A. So from a single partner.
Wow.
But yeah, I don't think people realize outside of producing podcasts, Dear Media is either a lead investor or a strategic investor in almost 10 or 11 consumer businesses at this point. We're in, streaming opportunities, live event, merchandise. The way I looked at Dear Media is podcasting is one of the most engaged mediums. If you can carry a podcast, then you can probably carry other channels. If you can maybe TikTok, but not be able to carry a podcast. You may be able to take an Instagram picture, but not be able to, right? So it's harder.
Keeping people's attention for 45 minutes or an hour ain't easy.
Yeah. So I looked at it not as a media executive, but I looked at it as, okay, if someone that's driving engagement, if they can build this channel, then they can build other channels. And so if we were going to do that, we would want the right to produce these, but then also help them build that next level brand, the next Skinny Confidental product line, the next Spritz Society, whatever that is. And that's how, we kind of think about this business is this is a launch pad to go and build the brand of your dreams.
And that's an excellent segue because I see Spritz Society, which you can't see on camera, but shout out to Ben Soffer, wherever you are right now. Hey, Ben, great job. I interviewed him and I'm pretty plugged into kind of creators and what's going on. I had no idea that you were part of this. I go, wait, what are they? They're the podcast couple, right? What are they doing launching, spritzes?
Yeah, I think, my background's mostly in consumer. And what I recognized early on is that businesses that were going to be reliant on third-party platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Google, for long periods of time, we're going to have a vulnerability. And the reason I love podcasting is it's one of the only mediums where you have that end-to-end relationship. It's on an RSS feed. You can put it on Spotify, on Google, on Apple, on wherever you want to put it. And you don't have a middleman stopping you from producing, right? And I figured if you could have that end-to-end relationship at scale, then sky's the limit with the other things you could launch and produce. And so we looked at it and kind of flipped VC on its head and said, okay, if you're just a check in a world where there's a lot of money out there and a lot of checks, that's not that interesting. But if you're a check and a bunch of media platforms and you have a direct relationship with a large targeted consumer base, you have an outsized advantage to go and launch a lot more than just a podcast. And so, yeah, Ben and them have done an incredible job with Spritz. We were happy to participate as strategics, both personally and through Dear Media. And, now hosting Ben's wife's show, the Toast, and their network, it was just a no-brainer for us to do something like that.
Now, we were talking community before, and everyone go... Shameless plug, go check out the Ben Soffer interview, obviously. But what he did was incredible with the community. We talk community, and we'll hammer it home again. So Ben has a community with Boy with No Job, his Instagram page, and he's thinking about this product. He's been thinking, just like with yours, this is going on in the background for a while. So I think what a lot of companies and brands, and I'm talking Fortune 500 brands, they, in their little bubble, say, this is a great product. Why? Because we say it's a great product. Yep. So you put it out. Now let's go find an audience, right? Yep. And I know you guys do this because I've read and I heard you talk about this. Ben did the same thing. He said, I got a community. Why not use that? And why not, hey, let's ask them. So he said he sent hundreds of DMs to his followers and said, thinking about this, what do you think? Should the bottle look like this? Should it look like this? And that's better feedback or market research than you can get, I think, probably anywhere else.
It's genius. And I think that it should be the way, in my opinion, to build a brand moving forward. I think to be able to content market and have the community and build the relationship and then have the ask is so much more purposeful, strategic, smart than just launching a product and being like, here's the product, buy it.
Buy it, you assholes.
It's such
that seems like
to
the
me
vibe
it's almost
sometimes.
like it's almost invasive.
Yeah.
And I think what I did is I had a Facebook group with 60,000 women in it, and I was constantly asking, what color do you like? Do you like soft touch varnish, or do you like more shiny packaging? How do you want to open this? And constantly getting feedback. And they were so invested in the product that by the time it came to launch, 4 years later. It was like they participated in it.
They built it with her.
Yeah, and I think
Literally.
it's just more powerful. And it honestly, to me, it's so multi-layered, and instead of just being so flat, like hey, buy the product. It feels invasive, kind of.
Buy my hoodie. Whenever I see an influencer with hoodies again, it's like you're shoving down. Buy my merch.
Yeah.
You know,
In every YouTube, they're screaming at me.
It's funny too because, you know, I'll pick on some of these maybe like older VCs. A lot of these guys, they sit in a boardroom and they come up with an idea that they think is a great idea to serve an audience that they've never spoken to or ever engaged with or even relate to, right? And I remember, you know, Lauryn and I won't put them on blast, but we joined a prominent podcast network early on, and it was former radio guys that had no clue how to create digital content, had no idea how to build a greater brand, and were just telling us how this was going to work. And I just remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, this is a real vulnerability for people that don't have a close relationship to what's actually going on these channels or actually what's happening with these audiences, right? Like, if you're not in direct communication and actually listening closely, or if you're working with creators and you're not actually partaking in what it takes to actually create content like this, how are you ever going to know? Right? Because you see a P&L in a spreadsheet and you think, oh, okay, like that's a good idea. I see other people doing it well. It's like you have to get close to it. And I think what Ben and Lauryn have done so well is
Claude. Stop thinking about me. You said Ben and Lauryn.
No, but I'm saying for your.
I thought you meant Ben and Claude.
Ben and Lauryn.
Got it.
And Claude.
I was
Hey,
like,
Claude, how
God,
are
he's
you?
so obsessed with me.
I mean, who wouldn't be?
But
let's be real.
But I think that they've
Thanks,
slowly over time been in constant communication with their audience while also working the channels to create these things so they know that when it's built, they know how to, one, serve it, and two, they know what the audience wants because they've been listening. So many people just don't listen.
It's funny, the Japanese have a term for it. I forget what it is, but it's basically go to the factory floor. If you're the CEO, you got to know what's going on at that press. And you don't need to know exactly what they're making, how many widgets they're making every day, but you better know what they're talking about and what's going on and what's breaking and what's working
genius.
and what's not.
I love that.
Go to the factory
That's a good
floor.
one.
When
That's a good
people
one.
tell me, even in this business, when they tell me how hard it is to produce a show, right? Or there's someone, we need 7 people to produce this one podcast. I go, I remember when there was just Lauryn and I in a suitcase running around. Like, it doesn't take 7 people. Like, they keep wanting to use the term lean and mean. I'm like, no, that's not the term. The term is efficient. Stop wasting time and money and energy on stuff that's not necessary, right? Like, actually get close to it. And I would look at all these overinflated businesses. I'm like, why is there 18 people working on something that 2 people could do, right? Because they weren't close to it. They didn't actually go, to your point, to the factory floor to see how it was done.
Do you use the same type, and I think I know the answer, but do you use the same type Spritz Society model with the other brands you invest in or the products you guys come up with yourselves?
I think Michael and I are a good team of investors because we bring 2 different things to the table. I am someone who goes mainly off intuition. I will go off my intuition, and if I like it, if I can show my audience it and they will like it, if I can talk about it organically and seamlessly, and if it's something that I would give my kids, and meaning like what I want when my daughter gets older, would I want her to wear this? Would I want my daughter to eat this? It has to be something that I would use for my family. If those are hitting, and then it's also aesthetically pleasing, because that's important too.
Of course.
And the social presence is strong, then I go to Michael and I go, hey. And then he looks under the hood. So he'll look at the numbers, like what they're offering, how much we should invest. So I think together,
I'm also looking at somebody who's got the ability to grit through all the pain and pressure that it takes to run a business, right?
Grit's important.
Like Ben is, I'll just keep picking on Ben because we talked about him. Like, people don't realize he's built a platform, but Ben is an operator and he's built a really savvy business and he's smart and he hustles. And
you can't teach that. What do you think? You've dealt with it. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you can't teach it.
Can you teach that, or is that how important is that in a founder when you're investing?
I think you either have it or you don't, right? Okay, so as a founder, as somebody who's starting a business, as an entrepreneur, I'll use that term. I think you have that or you don't. I don't think you can teach entrepreneurship. I think you can be taught how to be a great operator. I think you can be taught to be a great number 2 or number 3. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of number 2s and 3s that make a hell of a lot more money than me, right?
Yes.
And are vital to organizations. The president of this business, my right hand, she's incredible. Like, I couldn't run the business without her. But to be an entrepreneur, to be somebody who lays it all on the line, to build your own thing, you have to have an innate ability and be born with that thing that enables you to think like that, right? I don't think like an operator. I operate as a byproduct of the stuff that I create. But so I think to answer your question in a short way, like, yeah, you have to be born with that kind of thing.
You have to have a belly for it.
And now back
You
to
gotta
you.
have a belly for it.
No one told you to hit up 100 people a day on Twitter to get guests for your blog early on.
But and you will say this too, that it's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of 4-hour work week, Tim Ferriss. Yes, it takes a long time to reach out to 100 people. Sure, it takes, half an hour, 45 minutes. But if you do that every single day for 45 minutes and you can get 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 friends telling friends, it's momentum. And I think momentum's underrated.
Well, the reason being too on that vein is if you have just an operator's mentality, it's not going to compute from a financial standpoint in your brain of how you could sit there for 2 years making no money on something that's getting very little return, right? So like that's why I think you have to have that thing where it's a belief almost in that like you're going to do something for a long enough period of time that it's going to compound in such a large way that eventually it'll pay off, but you don't care if it doesn't pay off for 10 years, right? That it just, it's that thing.
I also think, just going off what Michael just said, you have to, this is a cliche, but you have to believe in yourself, because if you're asking someone for money and you don't believe in yourself, they can feel that energy 100%. And why would I ever want to invest in someone that doesn't believe in themselves? When I look back when I first started and I was making no money, there was no option. Like I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is my career. I'm going to go do it to the best of my ability. And this is going to happen. There was no like, if this doesn't work, I guess I'll do this. If this doesn't work, I guess I'll do that. Like it was like, this is what we're doing. And I think when you have that energy and you're asking someone for money, people feel it.
And so when we meet someone like that has the right formulas and the right product that she's mentioned, but then they have that other thing, they're like, oh, this person's not going to quit, right? Like there's no other option for this person. This is not something like, oh, I saw somebody selling hoodies on the side and they were making money, so I thought I'd put a better label and a better brand and do it myself. Oh, somebody's doing energy drinks, so I'm going to do that. Oh, I heard that waters are a hot category, I'm going to do that. No, we're betting on the person because they believe so much, not only in their brand, but themselves. That's like, okay, parking money with this person, this individual is just a safe bet.
It's funny, and I think you also, the one thing you're not talking about is you almost have to be semi-crazy.
Delusional.
Because, Lauren, I did the same thing as you, right? When I started, I have no media background or training. Yeah. I didn't go to journalism school. I had subpar kind of jobs, and somehow in my mind I go, I'm fucking gonna be the best interview ever. Why wouldn't I be?
But
Wife, can we spend money on this? And I don't think it'll make money, but I have no idea how and when. And she goes, okay, let's go. But there was no evidence of that. I just believe I don't even know why or what reason to go do it.
If you don't think you're great and you don't think you're the best thing on the planet, who else is going to?
100%.
You got to think you're great.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that sounds like selfish. I think everyone should think they're great.
Because everyone is great at something.
Yes.
I didn't know how to get here. One garage was closed. Meltdown. I don't know how to drive. I mean, I don't follow directions. I can't get into a parking garage once closed. I can't hang a picture. I can talk to people. That's it. That's all I got.
We were talking, it's like I sometimes, people maybe sometimes have difficulty interviewing us because if you trace my background, it's like real estate, aviation, some kind of agency. Why are you running this company? Why are you on a mic? Makes no sense.
No.
And I think we just look at it the whole time. We're like, why do people think they need all of these credentials to take a leap, right? It's like almost like I'm not allowed to do it unless I went to this kind of school or got this kind of education or got this kind of credential. Like, I don't know. I think it's just a huge belief in ourselves and then a lot of hard work and grit over time. And I will say that I joke around, but I'm also serious. I'm not going to win a gold star for being humble, right? It's like, but you have to kind of have that.
Yeah, 100%.
You have to be a little delusional, a little crazy, or else you're never going to take that leap.
I think that there is an excuse that's happening across the board that is not talked about enough, and that is the forever student. I think this needs to be talked about over and over and over. People want to be a student because if you're a student, you don't have to execute. So they want to go read all the books. They want to go listen to 600 podcasts. They want to go get 20 degrees. No, just execute. If I was in this landscape right now launching a business, I would create content around what I wanted to do. And with that comes opportunity. So say even I wanted to inject people's faces with Botox.
Okay.
Get on and start talking.
You're in the right city.
Yeah, start interviewing people who are doing it. Start getting involved within the community on a micro scale and put yourself out there. This whole I can't do anything until I get this degree. or I can't go on the news until I get a television journal broadcasting degree. Like, no, go launch a podcast. I can't do this until I listen to this many podcasts. No, go do, like, my thing is like, go do it.
And what people don't realize is, and I say this all the time in every company, like, I'm still figuring this out as I go too, right? I don't have all the answers. I'm going and making the best decision I can with the information available to me, and, trusting my gut, and then trying to make educated decisions on the information at hand. But I don't have all the answers either. The only way that I figured this out is by actually taking action. So many people wait and they're like, I need to have every single thing figured out before I do it. If I would have known half of the stuff that was going to take place doing any of these businesses, I would have quit before I even came close to starting. There's no way. There's so many problems and so many headaches that come with building anything, creating any kind of content, creating any kind of business brand. If you overthink it too much, you're just going to paralyze yourself. You're never going to actually get going.
And I think you said it too. I read somewhere you were like almost screaming it. It was an article and there was like 3 exclamation points after what you said. You said, just launch. Enough. Launch.
It's honestly, I promise you, it's the biggest problem that if anyone is listening, that they just put it out there.
If I've heard your story about what you're going to do more than 2 or 3 times, I'm out, because I can only hear about it so much. It's like, either go do it or don't. It's kind of like the girl or the guy that tells you they're going to leave the abusive relationship for the last year, and over. Every dinner you go to, they're telling you how terrible I won't even want to say abusive, but
sure,
a bad relationship. They're going to leave the relationship. They're going to leave the person. And you hear about it every dinner, to the point where it's like, either do it or don't, right?
Or about losing weight.
Yeah.
Tom, do you have any tips? Well, yeah, just do this, this, and this. I'll keep it simple. Do
Anything.
they do it? No one does.
Commit or don't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Talk about your other businesses. So we talked about one. You, Lauryn, you said you want to talk about more. You haven't, talked about this a lot. People don't explore it much. Let's hear more about what's going on behind the scenes. What else are you working on?
I think with me, they see the pink and the huge boobs and the blonde hair, and they're
That's
like,
definitely what I see.
and they're just like, oh, she's a podcaster, she's a blogger. But there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes that I think is important to talk about, especially for women.
Like what?
Like, I think that women can be multifaceted. I think that they can be a mother and be a wife and have a podcast and also be a business owner. I mean, I am doing crazy amount of work behind the scenes to make everything happen. I would say I'm doing more behind the scenes now than I'm doing in front of the camera. The preparation that goes into launching product, to investing, to writing a book, to whatever it is, there's so much that happens behind the scenes. And I think that that's important to talk about, because so often someone like me is maybe labeled an influencer. And I think women need to start talking about that it's more than just an influencer. There's so many little tiny things that create the whole recipe.
Like, if people talk about either of us in press, it'll always be like an influencer and a business person. People don't realize, like,
that is a disservice to you.
But it's not just a disservice to me. I think it's a disservice to a lot of women creating content online. Because
and it's a huge disservice to me, because I'm a huge influencer.
One of the biggest. I mean,
he
bigger
should be a hair influencer. No, I'll take someone like Claude from The Morning Toast.
Okay.
Yes, she does a podcast. She also is selling out Carnegie Hall?
Wow.
Madison Square?
Madison Square Garden.
She sells out a lot of places.
She is touring. She runs Spritz. She has her Spritz business. Their merch that they do is unique, and which it sells incredible amounts. I mean, they're doing all different kinds of things. She's a singer. I just think this word influencer is almost like dismissive, and it's almost reminds me of like a word that men made in the boardroom to like be like, oh, you're cute, you're an influencer, go over there.
Well, it's actually, there's some truth to that, as a lot of marketing guys got around and said, how do we associate spend to this kind of category of creator? And let's call it influencer marketing, right? I don't know if I'm simplifying it probably, but and then everybody became an influencer. They don't realize that some of these people that go to build platforms are incredible entrepreneurs, right? And so, yeah, I think if you hear the term influencer, people kind of sometimes...
It's negative connotations, I think.
In a weird way, because like I think, and listen, not to bash any kind of content creators, I'm obviously a huge supporter, but not everybody's taking pictures of themselves in a pretty outfit in the street, or,
taking
bumping their head into a door frame.
Taking pictures of myself is 0.0001% of my life. Like, truly. That's how little it is of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that someone would say, oh, it's 50%. But it's a stereotype. And I really want to start talking about that and breaking the mold for other people to come into this space and be like, no, I'm a businesswoman.
Yeah,
no.
well, just to pause on that, not to interrupt, but I interviewed some great girls who had a production or a promotions company like out of nightclubs. And they were saying when they were starting out, they were two attractive young ladies in their early 20s. So everyone, investors, business people, older male managers had just a perception, and that's who they were. So they said they had to go to such lengths as wearing turtlenecks at work and in meetings because they couldn't wear a nice looking skirt or maybe a sleeveless top or something because they wouldn't be perceived seriously. Has that changed? I'm a guy, what do I know? Or does that stuff still go on for female entrepreneurs?
I could write a book on how many times certain things like that have happened, but instead of it me being like, oh my God, this happened to me, for me, I just don't give it energy. So I'll walk into a boardroom with all men and I don't even think about I'm a girl, you're a boy. I don't even think about that anymore. But I just think if I can help penetrate the conversation about how women can be more than just a quote unquote influencer, and that there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes for a lot of these content creators. Some are producing, editing, lighting, video. I mean, some are writing magazines. A blog it's essentially doing a magazine by yourself.
Yep.
So I just think there needs to be a little bit more respect for the craft, and also people need to understand some of these influencers, quote unquote, are evolving into really incredible business people and entrepreneurs.
They have VC funds.
It's wild. And also,
it's crazy.
Forget what they look like. Like, like her tits are big, her skirt's short. Like, some of these influencers are actually like going to be the next conglomerates, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, doing so many shows, one of the benefits is you realize that most of the people that you meet are much more than what is presented on the surface. And I think, if you were an investor or a businessman or a woman and you're only looking at things like that on the surface, you miss so many opportunities, right? Like imagine, being in a boardroom and passing on a Spritz or passing on a Lauryn because you only see what's presented. And I think the approach we try to take is like, okay, there's somebody that's presenting a certain way on any of these channels, but like what's under the hood? That's we're most interested in.
That's a character people don't realize a lot.
I mean, and that's especially for people that are creating online content, right? Like a lot of this is exaggerated. A lot of this is, it's for presentation, but like what's under there? Like, what are they about? What are they building? Do they have the chops? Are they savvy? Like there's so many things that just get missed because of what people perceive. And that's why I think, listen, there's nothing against the term influencer other than I think it's limiting.
Yeah, and I've interviewed a ton, and that's how I started. They were interviewing influencers, and I think the reason, because on paper, I have nothing in common with these people. I'm their dad's age. I'm an old, bald guy, right? So I have nothing in common with the 19-year-old quote-unquote influencer. But I think why it worked was because I looked at them seriously. I realized real quickly that these kids are no joke. And the guy may just have washboard abs and look good with his shirt off, but people don't realize he's got a 20-person team behind him, and he's generating multi-millions of dollars, every quarter.
Yep. It's like these older guys that are, a lot of old guys, parents complaining about their kids not going and getting a corporate job because they're on TikTok creating content. It's like, well, that person may be making 6 figures already at 22 years old. Like, why are they going to go get a dusty desk job doing something they hate? And I think, just recognizing that things don't always have to be as they used to be, right? And recognizing that people have a lot of new creative lanes to go and make a living that they may have not had years ago. And so
the generational thing too is just uninspiring.
What do you mean?
It's just when I hear people say, "Oh, this generation and this generation," it's honestly, I have to tell everyone, it's so uninspiring. It makes you look jealous. It's there's nothing cool about it to make fun of different generations. Not everyone in a generation is something.
Well, let's be honest. There's shitty people in every generation.
Yeah, let's be real.
Right? And there's good people in every generation.
I just find the generation conversation, like when generations talk about other generations, just so fucking boring.
Yeah, I think you get in trouble when you try to just put people they want to rationalize things. They want to put things in a box so that they can understand it better. They want to put labels on things, right? We do that a lot, especially in this country. Put labels on things so that you can rationalize its place in your mind, right? When you do that, you're limiting so much understanding in so many different areas, and I think you're limiting the capabilities of what you could potentially see in terms of opportunity when you have to label or put somebody or something in a box. And so what we try to do is say, okay, not who is this person now or what is this content now, but what could this be? And if you look at kind of what we've done here is like, it did not, you asked earlier, could we envision all this? No, but by not putting it in a box and having the ability to say, okay, like this could be multiple things in a thoughtful way, we've been able to stem different, legs, arms of the business that makes sense, right? Because we weren't looking at it as like, oh, that's an influencer business, or that's just a podcast business, or that's just a blog, right? It was like, no, this is a brand that can be a lot of different things.
Let me ask you this. So we've talked a lot about creators. Now, who's it about? You, the listener. That's who it's always about, right? So the person in the car listening or at the gym on the treadmill listening goes, this is all great, but I'm not good at TikTok. And I'm not good at video. And let's be real, the one thing no one talks about, okay, yeah, it's consistency and yeah, it's showing up on there, blah, blah, blah. There's talent that needs to be there. And guess what? Everybody doesn't have talent for video or holding an audience's attention for a 45-minute podcast, and that's okay. But if they're sitting there going, okay, I know I can't do that. That's not my thing. But I also don't want that 9-to-5 crusty job that you were talking about. I kind of want to do my own thing. What advice or suggestions do you have for them to help figure that out?
I have a friend that is self-proclaimed one of the most laziest friends on the planet. She doesn't want to do anything. She literally is like, I just don't want to do anything.
Anything.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I told her, I was like, take a poster board and write down everything you like. And I am not talking about writing down things that are career oriented. So like, I'm not saying write down, I like doing math and I like speaking. It could be something like scrapbooking, right?
Okay.
Write down scrapbooking. Write down you like helping dogs. Write down all the things you like. It could be so stupid, like this stupidest little thing that you like to do, and then make a job out of it. Take the things and get creative and make a job out of what you wrote. And you're going to say, how do you make a job about it? Well, there's multiple ways. Can you write about it? Can you vlog about it? Can you do a podcast on it? Can you surround yourself with the people who are doing it? Can you start a charity? You can take random things that you like, put it together, shake it up in a martini shaker, and see what comes out. I think that the scrapbooking thing, if I had told you I want to be a scrapbooker 30 years ago, you'd be like, what are you talking about? But I am scrapbooking. Like, really, I am. That's kind of what I'm doing.
And probably one of the most successful scrapbookers out in the game right now.
Well, I think for the listeners out there, I truly, and I really mean this, believe that everybody has a talent, some talent. I don't think people don't have a talent. I think the mistake is that we pay too much attention to other people's talents, right? I am not good at taking pictures. I'm not good at writing on a blog. I knew I wasn't going to be good at committing to video all the time. I'm definitely not going to be good at TikTok. You can't shut me the hell up. My whole life, every teacher I ever had said, shut the hell up. And I never would, right? He likes to talk. I wouldn't stop talking. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be talking anyway. Why not do this? And I just
Why not get paid for it?
Yeah, and I found a medium that's like, I would just keep talking to anyone for forever. And so, there's obviously some nuance to that, and you develop skills over time. I always encourage people to go back and listen to episode 1 of our show. It is atrocious. It's embarrassing. I wish it never saw the light of day, but I leave it up to show people how absolutely terrible both of us were on
That's
a mic,
awesome.
right?
A great book to read is Mastery.
Sure. But the point is that I think you look at someone like my wife, and maybe you're an aspiring creator, and it's like, man, like, look at all those things that are going on. Like, I need to do that. And it's like, well, maybe that's not your talent. Or you look at me and you see me on a mic, like, oh, I want to do that, but maybe that's not your talent. You have to dig deep to figure out what you're excited about, what your God-given talent is, and then figure out if you're going to go on a creative medium, what is the best medium, whether that's writing or video or it's, podcasting, whatever. Or if it's not a creative medium where it needs to be front-facing, how can you apply your talent to an organization, to your own thing? Like, I was always a behind-the-scenes person, and I always say, like we joked earlier, the podcast is the side hustle. Like I feel I'm a good entrepreneur, right? I feel like I like to operate businesses. So, I think we attribute too much attention in some ways to what everybody else is doing, and it disables us from looking at what we would be good at doing.
That is a really great tip. If you're listening and you write your list out, you need to stop consuming everyone else's content. That is a big one. So many people waste so much time consuming other people's content. I think being really smart about who you're consuming and how much you're consuming, because if you're consuming someone else's content, it's taking away energy from you creating your own thing. And this is not being talked about enough. It's the forever student, going back to the beginning. a forever student also includes consuming way too much Instagram, way too much TikTok, way too much Reels. Like if you're just going like this all day and I'm doing this scroll with my finger, like it's taking away from you.
When I started running Dear Media, I stopped listening to podcasts.
Did you really?
Yeah, completely. I listen to once in a while, I'll see a clip, I'll see some people, I'll obviously meet with different talent, but I was like, listen, if all I'm doing is consuming all the time and paying attention, one, I may develop someone else's voice, I may develop their style, I may like take myself on my own, but two, like I'm in it so much day to day that I need to see the opportunities that are outside of it, right? Like I know what's going on inside of it. I do it every day. I need to know the things that are around it. And so again, I think when you have that forever student mentality, or when you're paying too much attention to what everyone else is doing, it's a vulnerability. Even, people ask all the time, like, what do you think about your competitors? I don't know. I bet they're great. I don't know what they're doing. I really don't. I have no idea. I don't know.
You got your own stuff to worry about.
Yeah. I mean, I always acknowledge that, at least in audio, there's probably some people doing amazing things, great channels, other networks doing incredible work, but I'm not paying attention to what they're doing. That's their thing, right? I got to stay focused on what we're doing, because if I take myself out of it and constantly worry about what everyone else is doing, I can't focus on building something for here, right?
I think the other thing too, just to add to that, is you don't have to figure it out when you're 18 either. Now, LeBron James, if you looked at LeBron, and I hate LeBron James, I'm a big basketball fan, but I acknowledge his greatness. If you saw LeBron James at 14 in the gym somewhere, you knew, and everyone in the gym knew, including LeBron, that he was going to be a stud in the NBA. Most people are 14 years old and don't know what they're doing that weekend, let alone what they're going to do in 30 years for a career. So it may take several, we're talking pivots. You may go, this job, I think this is the way to go. I fucking hate this job because of X, Y, and Z. Sure. If I do like this, maybe I could write about dogs because I'm into that or whatever.
Right.
Like it's going to take some time, I think, to figure that out.
I'm still figuring it out. I think Lauryn is too. I think we've, again, like we like practices that we're doing, but to sit here and say that we've got it all figured out, no way. There's not even close. I think we just have the perspective of this is going to be a lifelong endeavor and a lifelong pursuit of, working to build something and working to be productive people. And so I think that perspective also gives both of us the patience to say, okay, we don't have to have it figured out at 35 or 40 or even 50, right? It's a lifetime. And I look at guys, these old guys, some of them 60, 70, 80 in their prime. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like look how much time you have. I think a lot of young people, and I know for sure I did this when I was younger, it's like, you think you have to have it all figured out tomorrow. I didn't have anything figured out until maybe a year ago. I'm not kidding, right? And so,
but you were taking action the whole time.
Sure, right, of course, and that's the thing. But I think so many people put pressure on themselves, especially young men and women, and they think they have to have it all laid out right away. It's like life is a long time. Hopefully, right? You have a lot of time to figure it out.
I think that's a great point to end on. I kind of wanted to end on you, Lauryn, because I think you've dropped more knowledge throughout this whole interview. But that's just my opinion.
God, Tom's so smart.
Tom, you gotta, you know how to play to the court here.
Yeah.
Well, guys, anything else you wanted to talk about, business-wise, things you have going on, things to promote? Everyone knows where to find you.
That was an incredible interview. You brought so much energy. Really, really loved it. Thank you so much for having us. You can find me at Lauryn Bosstick and at the Skinny Confidental if you want an ice roller.
Thank you for doing this, Tom. You're great. I think I'm at Michael Bosstick, Skinny Confidential podcast, and then anything on Dear Media. If we're not your cup of tea, there's 100 other ones. So.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching or listening or wherever you're consuming this, and make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. New episodes every 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time with the biggest entrepreneurs in the world. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you for doing this.
Bye.
Thank you.